You wash your fruits and vegetables before eating them. You run them under cold water, maybe give them a scrub, and feel like you've done your part. You've been careful. You've been responsible. But here's what nobody told you, what scientists just confirmed in a landmark UCLA study. The chemical that's been quietly destroying brain cells isn't sitting on the surface of your food waiting to be rinsed off. It has already been absorbed. It's already inside. And according to researchers at one of the most respected universities in the world, long-term exposure to this pesticide increases your risk of developing Parkinson's disease by 2.5 times. The scariest part? You've probably been eating it your entire life without knowing its name. Before we go any further, I need to be clear about something. This is not a story about farm workers. It's not about people who live next to chemical plants or work in agriculture. This is about anyone who has ever bought groceries at a supermarket. Anyone who has ever handed their child an apple, a bunch of grapes, or a bowl of strawberries thinking they were doing the right thing. Anyone who has ever eaten a salad and felt virtuous about it. That is exactly who this research is talking about. This chemical, chlorpyrifos, has been sprayed on the crops that end up in your grocery store for decades. It is not an edge case. It is not a rare exposure. It is woven into the food system that billions of people depend on every single day. Nearly 1 million Americans are currently living with Parkinson's disease. It is a progressive neurological disorder that steals movement, dignity, and independence one piece at a time. It starts with a tremor in one hand, a slight stiffness in the morning, a voice that grows softer than it used to be. Then it progresses: balance problems, freezing mid-step, difficulty swallowing, cognitive decline. There is no cure. There is no reversal. Once the neurons are gone, they are gone. And most people who receive the diagnosis had no idea it was coming. No family history, no warning signs, just a body that started betraying them, seemingly out of nowhere. For decades, scientists have been asking why. Why do some people develop Parkinson's and others don't? Why is the rate of this disease rising? A new study from UCLA may have just handed us one of the most significant answers we've ever had. This chemical, chlorpyrifos, is an organophosphate pesticide that has been used in agriculture across the United States and around the world since the 1960s. UCLA researchers conducted one of the most rigorous studies ever performed on this question, analyzing data from 829 people diagnosed with Parkinson's disease and 824 people without it. They didn't just ask participants what they remembered eating. They used California's detailed pesticide application records, combined with each person's home address and work history over time, to calculate actual real-world exposure to chlorpyrifos across decades of their lives. This is not a survey. This is not self-reported data. This is hard numbers matched to real people over a lifetime of exposure. And what they found stopped researchers cold. Those with the highest levels of long-term exposure had nearly 2.74 times higher odds of developing Parkinson's disease compared to people with minimal or no exposure. Not twice the risk, nearly 3 times. And the risk rose significantly for exposures going back more than a decade, which is entirely consistent with how Parkinson's develops. Because here is something your doctor may never have told you. By the time you notice the first tremor, by the time you sit across from a neurologist and receive a diagnosis, you have already lost between 60 and 80% of the dopamine-producing neurons in your brain. The damage started years, possibly decades, before you felt a single symptom, which means the window to understand and prevent this disease is not the moment of diagnosis. It is right now. It is years ago. It is every meal you've eaten in between. And the implications of that timeline extend far beyond any individual diagnosis. Parkinson's disease costs the United States an estimated $52 billion every year in medical care, lost productivity, and the invisible labor of family members who become full-time caregivers without warning and without compensation. Behind every statistic is a family reorganized around a disease nobody saw coming, a spouse who stopped working to provide care, a parent who can no longer hold their grandchildren safely, a person in the middle of their life who planned for decades ahead and suddenly cannot plan past next month. When we talk about chlorpyrifos and its potential role in driving Parkinson's rates upward, we are not talking about an abstract public health metric. We are talking about the texture of people's lives, the specific, irreplaceable years lost to a disease that may have had a preventable origin sitting on a grocery store shelf. Now pay attention to this next part, because this is where the story stops being just about science and starts being something much larger. Chlorpyrifos was banned from residential use in the United States in 2001. 25 years ago, regulators decided it was too dangerous to have inside your home, too toxic for the surfaces your children might touch, the floors they crawl on, the air they breathe indoors. But on the crops that end up on your dinner table, that took another 20 decades to partially address. Agricultural restrictions weren't tightened until 2021, and even then, the word is restricted, not banned. Chlorpyrifos is still legally applied to crops in the United States today. Meanwhile, the European Union banned it entirely. The United Kingdom banned it entirely. Regulators in those countries looked at the same science and decided the risk was unacceptable. In the U.S., the chemical has remained on the market, and the company behind it, Dow Chemical, spent years and enormous resources lobbying to keep it that way. Follow that timeline slowly. Too dangerous for your floors in 2001? Still acceptable on your food in 2026? Ask yourself what changed. Ask yourself who benefited from that gap. Here is what I want to ask you directly right now. Has anyone in your family been affected by Parkinson's disease? A parent, a grandparent, a relative whose hands started shaking one day and never stopped? Drop a comment and tell me, because what I'm about to explain, the exact biological mechanism by which this pesticide destroys brain cells, might answer a question your family has been carrying for years without resolution. Your brain has a built-in cleaning system. It operates around the clock, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and its job is to identify damaged proteins, tag them for disposal, and clear them out before they accumulate and cause harm. This process is called autophagy, cellular self-cleaning, and it is one of the most critical maintenance functions your body performs. Think of it like the garbage collection system for your neurons. As long as it's running, damaged material gets processed and removed. When it breaks down, the trash piles up, and when enough trash piles up inside a neuron, that cell dies. Chlorpyrifos breaks the garbage system. Research published in the journal Molecular Neurodegeneration showed that exposure to chlorpyrifos disrupts autophagy, the exact process that clears damaged proteins from brain cells. When researchers blocked this disruption or removed the problematic protein from the equation, the neurons were protected from damage. In animal studies, mice exposed to the pesticide developed movement problems and lost dopamine-producing neurons, the same neurons that die in human Parkinson's patients. The exposed mice also showed significant brain inflammation and abnormal accumulation of alpha-synuclein, a protein that clumps together in the brains of Parkinson's patients and is considered one of the disease's defining biological hallmarks. This is not a correlation. This is a mechanism. This is science showing exactly how, step by step, this chemical gets into the system and starts killing the cells your brain needs to control your body. Dr. Jeff Bronstein, the UCLA neurologist who led this research, was careful and precise in his language, but the conclusion he reached was not ambiguous. The association between chlorpyrifos and Parkinson's disease is likely causal, not linked, not associated, likely causal. Now, here is the part of this story that will make you uncomfortable, and I think it should. You're probably already thinking about solutions. Buy organic, switch to the farmer's market, read labels more carefully. And I understand that impulse, because when we feel threatened, we want a concrete action we can take to protect ourselves and the people we love. But the reality of chlorpyrifos exposure is more complicated than a shopping list adjustment. Organic farms can and do use certain approved pesticides, natural in origin but not always neutral in effect. Cross-contamination from neighboring conventional farms is real, documented, and difficult to prevent. Wind carries pesticide drift across property lines. Irrigation water carries residues into soil. And chlorpyrifos doesn't only enter your body through food. Research has shown that people who live near golf courses, where organophosphate pesticides are applied to maintain that particular shade of green, face elevated Parkinson's risk. The exposure is not contained to the produce aisle. It moves through air, water, and soil in ways that individual consumer choices cannot fully address. You can make better decisions at the grocery store. You should. But the idea that personal responsibility alone is sufficient protection against a systemic chemical contamination problem is exactly the framing that allows the systemic problem to continue unchallenged. It puts the burden on the individual and removes it from the institutions that have the actual power to act. So let me leave you with this. A research team at UCLA has now produced evidence using real human data, animal studies, and a demonstrated biological mechanism that a specific pesticide applied to the food in your grocery store more than doubles your risk of developing a disease with no cure. A disease that will, if it reaches you, progressively remove your ability to walk independently, to speak clearly, to control the movements of your own body. The European Union looked at this evidence and banned the chemical. The United Kingdom looked at this evidence and banned the chemical. In the United States, it remains legal, in use, and present in the food supply. The gap between what the science says and what the policy does is not an accident. It is the result of sustained, organized, well-funded effort to keep things exactly as they are. That cost has a price. The price is measured in the 1 million Americans already living with Parkinson's disease, and in the people who will receive that diagnosis in the years ahead without ever understanding why. What makes this moment different from previous warnings about pesticides and health is the specificity of the evidence. This is not a broad epidemiological observation that people who eat more vegetables and therefore more pesticides have higher rates of some illness. This is a named chemical, a named biological mechanism, a named disease, and a quantified risk level that regulators in multiple countries have already deemed unacceptable. The science is not incomplete. The science is not waiting for more data. What is waiting, what has been waiting for years, is a policy response in the United States that matches the urgency of the findings. Every year that response is delayed is another year of exposure for millions of people who have no idea this conversation is even happening. Which is exactly why this conversation needs to leave the pages of academic journals and reach the people it actually affects. Share this. Send it to someone you care about, not because panic is useful, it isn't, but because informed people make different demands of the systems that are supposed to protect them. And right now, those systems need to feel that pressure. I have one question for you, and I want your honest answer in the comments below. Whose job is it to protect you? Is it the government's job, and they are failing at it? Is it the food industry's responsibility, and they have simply decided that responsibility is not profitable enough to accept? Or is it entirely on you to research every pesticide applied to every crop in every product you put in your cart, and to somehow make fully informed decisions in a system that was not designed to give you that information? Because in 2026, with this evidence on the table, one of those three is clearly not doing their job. I think you already know which one. Tell me what you think.